posters up in the school that were they were like, hey, there's this movie, Saving Private Ryan, which at the time I was like, what a dumb name for a movie. Everybody's faking it until they make it, you know?
Yeah.
Everybody in every industry, I feel like, about Method Man, working with him has been such a pleasure. He's the real deal. Like, I have a feeling that Cooper Saxe is going out in a body bag. You know, I grew up with 3 brothers, so there's 4 of us, 4 boys. It was a little nutty. I grew up in a little tiny farm town up in Washington State. Sagebrush and rolling hills and lakes and stuff like that. It was great. I mean, it was all I knew. You know, I grew up thinking I was going to be a baseball player.
Okay.
That's what I thought was going to happen, and it didn't.
Are you still into baseball? Are you like a huge baseball fan?
You know what? Right now, I'm a dad now, so I've got a wife and 2 boys of my own.
Nice, congrats.
Thank you. And so my 14-year-old, who's like a giant already. I mean, for a 14-year-old, he's like 5'10" or 5'11", and he's playing football. And so,
okay.
So we've been all about football, and my wife is from Kansas City, so we're all about the Chiefs right now. We're all about the Chiefs, and we're hating on the Buccaneers. You know what I mean?
I think we all kind of hate the Buccaneers a little bit.
And it's pretty impressive. And not to take this in a different direction, but if you haven't seen Man in the Arena, the whole Tom Brady thing,
I haven't watched it yet.
Oh man, it's pretty wild. Love him or hate him, it's like an incredible journey that he's been on.
So when you decided, or did you decide to go into acting? Did acting find you? Like, how did that work out? When did that happen?
Well, you know, when I was a kid, I was always really into entertaining people, making people laugh. Mainly, it wasn't like serious, you know. It was making people laugh. I used to do a bunch of imitations and stuff, and you know, Don Rickles stuff, ridiculous when I was a kid, and people really enjoyed that, and it made me feel good. But it was when I was 14, somebody talked me into doing a play, and I was hey, I'll tell you what, I'll do your stupid play as long as I don't have any lines. I don't want any lines, and I don't want to be on stage for very long. But I'll do it. And he was like, okay, so it was You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. And I played Tumbleweed, Snoopy's cousin, and all I would do was roll across the stage like every once in a while, and it was gonna kill. I was like, oh, this is gonna be awesome. I'm literally just doing somersaults across the stage. And then 3 days before we opened, the guy that was playing Snoopy got shit canned, and the director was like, dude, we need you to step up. And so I played Snoopy, and that was kind of the beginning of it, because I mean, it just, you know, listen, looking back on, I actually have a VHS tape of it. I was pretty terrible. But the girls loved it, and you know, people loved it, and so I was like, oh man, I'm awesome. And then I've seen the tape, and I was like, dude, what you thought was happening and what was actually happening were 2 totally different things.
It's not the same place.
but you know what? It got me inspired, and so then I went on and got a scholarship. And this is obviously why I kind of didn't pursue the baseball thing. I tried out for the Mariners and stuff like that. I was taking baseball pretty seriously, but I got a full ride scholarship for acting, and went to study acting. And coming out of my town, like, nobody was doing that, and nobody was doing it or getting scholarships, and you know, it was kind of my way of getting educated originally. Because nobody else in my family really went to a 4-year college like that ever.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty big deal.
All right. So, not that you put baseball on the back burner, but you made that decision as a kid, which is it's challenging because it's like you have dreams on one hand and then opportunity on the other one. When you let go, did you let go of baseball, or do you feel like you just kind of?
Yeah, I did. When I was a senior, and once I was trying out for the Mariners and also auditioning for colleges at the same time. So it was about that time that it was like, hey, you're going to college now. What are you going to do with your life? Now, right. I didn't necessarily realize that I could have really done both for a while and continued those. But the reality is it was kind of an equal passion at that point. For, the acting and the baseball were kind of equal passions. And realistically speaking, I don't know that I was good enough at baseball. I was good. Don't get me wrong. I had like the highest batting average in the whole region, and we were winning championships up there and stuff. So I was good, but I wasn't like, exploding onto people's radar like I should have been at that age. Gotcha. So I went with the acting thing, and part of it was that the school I was going to, they had a team, but it wasn't, they weren't offering any. It was Whitman College. It's a tiny little liberal arts college. And their baseball team was like, hey guys, you want to play baseball? It was like,
Coming out of school, what was your first acting job?
Well, it was when I was still in school. I went and studied abroad at Lambda in London.
Okay.
What would have been my junior year of college. I auditioned for the program and got in there, and so I went over to London, studied there for a year. While I was there, there were posters up in the school that were like, hey, there's this movie, Saving Private Ryan, which at the time I was like, what a dumb name for a movie. Now everybody's heard it, but at the time I was like, Saving Private Ryan. Could you come up with, but regardless, I went and auditioned for that. And then I remember it was literally my first real audition. So, I was pretty naive. And so I actually just called up the casting office before I left. And I said, hey, so I know I auditioned for this a few weeks ago, but like, should I stick around? Because I'm getting ready to head back to the States. And they were like, no, it's okay. Go ahead. Go back to the States, buddy. And I was like, oh. And so anyway, so I left. Of course, I land in Washington State, and then the next day they called me and they said, hey, we need you back here. So then I spent 3 weeks in Ireland filming Saving Private Ryan.
Which, to have that as like your first acting job is huge.
It was pretty awesome, man.
It's ironically, it's one of my favorite movies. I love like war movies, and that one is just, I think that one is insane. Like that and Full Metal Jackets just kind of like does it for me.
Yeah. Pretty cool to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Obviously, I was a very small part of it, but regardless, it's a memorable part of the movie, and it was getting to work with Tom Hanks and all the other guys that were part of that at that point in the movie, the beginning of the movie, and work with Spielberg for your first time out was pretty spectacular.
Yeah, most people that I talk to that interview that are actors say when they step on to like their first big set, it's overwhelming. You're kind of like, why am I here? And did you get that emotion? Like, I don't belong here. Like, this is way too big.
It's interesting. I feel like a lot of people feel like a fraud. A lot of people, and probably in damn near every industry, probably people are like, seriously, they're letting me do this and they're paying me? But so there's a degree of that. But the reality is, it's interesting coming from the tiny little town that I came from. And this was just kind of a life lesson. I remember thinking, man, I'm going to college now, and everybody's going to be so trained and like really serious about this, and now this is like real competition. This is going to be, I'm going to be a fish out of water here. I'm going to be just drowning. in this everybody else's talent. And then I went there and it was like, oh, this is no big deal. And then when I got into London, at the place in London, I was like, oh my God, now this is real, because people had to audition to get in here, and they're picking from thousands of people. They're picking 30 people to do this program. It's going to be the best of the best. I'm gonna be like, I can't believe they let me into this thing. And then I got there, and I'm like, what? This is okay. And then when I went to LA, when I moved to LA, I was like, okay, but these are where the professionals are at. Like, I mean, this is going to be, and it's the same thing. You know, I moved to LA and I'm like, oh, come on. So my point is everybody's faking it till they make it, you know?
Yeah.
Everybody in every industry, I feel like, you know, everybody tries to act in interviews, not these interviews, I'm talking about like job interviews where they act all professional and serious. And you know the kind of crap that they're doing at home. Same kind of crap you know? So it's like,
that's the truth.
We're all just people, and so I feel like I have kind of, I mean, granted, I'm older now. I'm like one of the senior statesmen on our show now, but looking back on it, it's like there's room for all of us, man. We all belong. There's so much work out here. There's if you have the dream and you stick to it and you persevere, you will win. Well, the only reason people fail in this business, I think, is because of lack of support, family and friends and people that you love, kind of going like, what are you doing? Like that kind of crap, which you have to like silence and get out of your space.
Yeah.
But handle those people and go, hey, no, this is what I'm doing. Support me. And people giving up.
Yeah.
People giving up. When I started this thing, I'd walk into auditions, there'd be 1,000 guys that I was like, oh crap, they look just like me, and they all can act, and they all, you know, and 5 years later, that 1,000 turned into 100. 5 years after that, it was 20. And now there's like 5 of us from that original group, you know what I mean?
Yeah. This is a hard city. I mean, not even just being a hard city. I think the industry of entertainment is very fickle at times, and you have to have perseverance and you have to push through. But it's just, there's a lot of rejection, and if your self-esteem isn't strong, like, it's very easy to get discouraged.
Well, and there's a lot of stuff that seems very personal.
Yeah.
That is not necessarily personal, but it feels personal. Like, you know, when I was 22, when I first moved to LA, it was like I was a 22-year-old handsome dude, all-American, white kid from farm town. It was like, oh, hey, here's opportunities, just like, you know, audition like crazy. And then as you get older, they're like, yeah, you know, nobody wants to see you right now. You know, that's what I hear. That's what I hear. It's like, you know what, you had your minute, like, you're done. Like, take a seat. And it's like, well, wait a second, but I have so much more to give. And they're like, okay. You know? So, you know, there becomes a point where you really have to know what you're about and be after it for yourself, and not let anything dissuade you from what you're about.
I love that. Power.
Power. The insanity of power.
The insanity of power. One, how did you get into the role? Like, into the series, just to start. When you took the role, did you look at it like, these fans are going to hate me, and I need to get ready for the impact of what that's going to look like on my life?
You know, I'll say I've made a career of, prior to Power, almost all of my jobs were, except for the film jobs. Film jobs were a little bit different because it's a different kind of narrative than TV. But most of my guest star work on TV, I was like a killer, a pedophile, a lunatic. I was always killing somebody or being killed by somebody, or raping somebody or molesting somebody, or it was constant. Like, so I was like, oh, all right. So when this came along, first of all, originally I auditioned for Tommy, which was, I mean, it's funny because when I got the audition for this, I was like going, I could really use this job right now. I had a family and 2 little kids, and I was kind of like struggling a little bit, and I was going, okay, well, this isn't really my casting. but let me put on Tommy. Let me figure this out to be Tommy. And so I went in and I threw down as best farm boy could for Tommy, you know?
Yeah.
And it was enough. And strangely, actually, the baseball connection is the reason I got in the door on this job was because Vicky Thomas, who cast the original Power, cast the movie 42. And I was like this close. I wasn't in that movie, but because I played baseball and I had gone in, and I was this close to being in that movie, playing one of the racist pricks in that movie. And so when this came around, she was like, "Oh, that guy's," you know. She brought me back in for Power, on the heels of that. And so I went in for Tommy. That's when I met Courtney and some of the other producers, and then I didn't hear shit for like 3 weeks, and I was like, oh. And then they brought me back in for Greg Knox, which was played by Andy Bean, like Angela's boyfriend. And I was like, okay, well, this is kind of more in the ballpark. This, you know, kind of goody two shoes, all American, you know, prick. You know, he wasn't a prick actually, kind of goody two shoes kind of guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's kind of closer, but it's not totally my casting, but it's more. And then I didn't hear anything for another few weeks. And then they sent me the breakdown for this, which was like, you know, privileged, highly educated prick, and all stuff. And I was like, well, this is my casting, you know. And it's funny because that's not who I am at all. Like,
right.
It's not my background. It's not I grew up in a trailer park, man. So like, it's not who I am at all. But that's irrelevant when it comes to casting. It's it's about how you walk through the door and what they see and what they hear and the vibe that you put off. And so I was like, all right, this is my part. And at that point, clearly they were trying to find something for me too, because they liked what I was doing. They just didn't quite jive with the right role yet.
Right.
And that first year, I was basically like a recurring guest star. I wasn't a regular on the show yet until season 2. And so, you know, it was this. I mean, realistically speaking, man, Power has been, in the Power universe, has been the absolute biggest blessing of my career. I think you asked if I knew it was going to be this sort of a thing. No, and the reason I was telling you about my past and my resume a bit there was because I didn't originally think that the fans, you know, would care or would engage with us this way. But, you know, with the advent of Twitter and Instagram and the access that people have and the voice, the real voice that people get to have, is amazing. It's amazing that you can be at home or in a movie theater and be like, you know, blown out by something and go, bro, what were you thinking, man? Send. And then maybe potentially the dude at the other, you know, Schwarzenegger at the other end of it goes, hey, thank you for watching. And you're like, hey, Schwarzenegger.
Right. It becomes a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. And listen, I've had that. I've watched things where I've been really, really impressed by an actor. And I become, I don't want to say I become a fan because I'm in the business, they're a peer, but I'm a fan, and I'll reach out and go, hey, you know, I have to tell you, and just lay out my compliment or whatever. And almost always I get a response from people. And so it's wild to have this access. And at first I didn't get what was going on. I was like, why everybody hates me? Everybody's saying all these awful things to me, like that I should die and that they want to stab me and that I suck and all these things and really personal things, and then also character driven things like you need to leave them alone, you need to back off, you know, all these sorts of things. I'm like, well, I'm not writing this stuff. But as I engage with people, which I try to engage with most people, it immediately turns, because I think people just really enjoy sort of blurring the lines between what's real and what's not. But at the end of the day, the second I engage with somebody, of course they know that I'm not that Cooper Saxe.
Right.
But it's fun to kind of to treat it that way. It's
Yeah.
an audience, and so it's been pretty awesome. And so now when I get hate mail, which is daily, I just like, hey, that gives me a rise in a good way. It makes me kind of go, hey, I'm doing my job, and people are responding. When people stop responding, when there's silence, that's when I'm kind of like, wait, what's going on? You know?
Right. That's the thing. It's like, if you're a fan of the show, you hate Saxe. Like, you hate him, and it's only ironically like the maybe first 2 seasons, and then after that, it's almost like you realize you're hating the person that's trying to do the right thing, and then you start having that conflict in your own head, like, but he actually is right. Like, Ghost is a horrible person, and he needs to be in jail, but you don't want to see Ghost fall and go to jail. So it's like it's weird. You become a part of the bad side, and you want to see the bad side win, and it's just like you hate the good side.
It's pretty amazing. I've always been so impressed with Courtney and all the writers in the writers' room, but Courtney's ability to kind of really guide your attention and guide who you're rooting for. Because in the biggest mind, you know, and I don't know if we're swearing on here, but you know, the biggest, like,
You're fine.
the biggest mind fuck that happened for me was when we were wrapping up Power, and there was talk of like, hey, they're doing a Tariq spinoff. And Courtney came to me, she's like, how do you feel about being on the Tariq spinoff? And I was, of course, like, 100%, yeah. And then it's when she walked away, I was like, everybody fucking hates Tariq. Why? What are we doing a Tariq spinoff for? Like, that's gonna. I was like, what? Now, if they came, which is what I thought was gonna happen, and they're like, oh, and they're gonna do a Tommy spinoff too, and I'm like, well, yeah, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
But with the Tariq thing, but I tell you what, season 6 of Power, there's a gentle shift, and you start to kind of go, oh, I see what this kid's about, and I see the reason he's the way he is because of that guy and this pressure, and look at how his own dad is betraying him and saying you should turn yourself in, and calling him names and calling him a punk and treating him dismissive, and so then by the end of Power, you're kind of like, man, I might still kind of hate Tariq, but
you understand it.
But I get it. And then once we started doing season 1, it's like the audience all of a sudden loves Tariq, and you're like, how did we get here?
How did we get? It's like I watch it now and I'm just like, Tariq, all of this is your fault. Like, all of this is your fault. Everyone that's dead and in jail and everything is Tariq's fault. And it's just kind of like, you look at it that way, then you realize there's so many other moving parts around the show that he's responding the way that any, I guess, kid would.
He's surviving. He's surviving.
Yeah,
and
you almost forget that he's a kid.
He's also looking out for, the difference is before, everything he touched every choice Tariq made for 5 seasons was wrong. Everything he did led to somebody dying, led to a horrible situation for his family or his sister or somebody. It was always the wrong decision. And then, and he was being led by, honestly, not having information. He was a kid going, who am I? What am I about? Who is my dad? What is my legacy? And he wasn't given any information. And as he started to gain the information, through Kanan and through other ways, he started to kind of formulate who he is, and understand what he's a product of. And then as he learned the game from his mom and from Kanan, basically, he's now making. It's basically the way I look at it. It's kind of Ghost is kind of an origin story in a way.
Absolutely. This season, like, you're side by side with Method Man, who, like, he shocks me every time I see him in an acting role. Like, I think he gets better with everything he does. Now your character is almost like trying to play the good guy and doing the right thing, and now you're becoming the victim of the bad guys again. So how do you take that turn, and how does it feel now being in that part of the character of, again, trying to do the right thing and seeing all the mess around it?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm with you, man, about Method Man. Working with him has been such a pleasure. He's the real deal. And he's not only is he talented, he's just great energy, fun, shows up and works hard, and we have a lot of fun working together. And I think that he's a formidable enough presence that it really keeps me on my toes and makes me really sort of have to step up.
Yeah.
It is very strange to now be on the other side where, being a prosecutor for so long, it was kind of being the hunter, right? Mm-hmm. Constantly on the hunt, and they just keep getting away. And now I'm on the defense, and it's like I'm being asked to defend people that I know are guilty and that I know I shouldn't be defending. And based on the way I'm built, I spent a long time sort of building this prosecutor,
right?
And now it's like trying to reframe it and work for the other side now. It's just sort of like doesn't quite jive with Cooper Saxe's spirit, and so it's also strange because I'm being asked to by Davis MacLean to ignore so much,
right?
Hey, even right now in these episodes, don't ask him this, don't ask him that. You don't want to know. You don't want to know if he's guilty. You don't want to know these. And I'm like going, wait, how can we? So you're saying somebody that we know is guilty of, And so it's. But I do think one of the things that's been interesting about my character is that over the years, it went from kind of being a little bit more, I don't want to say clinical because it wasn't clinical, but it was just kind of straight-laced within the law. He was a jerk and all that, and a thorn in Angela's side and all that. But he really was like, I want justice. Right. And I would never compromise my ethics, my personal moral code. And then season 4 or 5, it was like, you know what? A guy can only have so many L's. And working inside the bounds of the law was just not cutting it. So I was like, well, let's just push it a little bit. We just plant this thing. I'm only doing it because I know he's guilty.
Right.
So I can sleep at night. I'm actually trying to get justice. And then it's just continued to get, build to the point where Cooper Saxe gets a gun and goes, I'll just handle this myself. And now he's kind of trying to put himself back together in a different way. And I think the addition of my family, with my niece and the family stuff kind of shed a different light on Cooper for me as well. Like not just for the audience, but for me, I was like, oh, this is why Cooper's built this way. And then you sort of start to see him as a father figure, and now you're starting to see him as he's got a romantic side, he's got this love interest, and so everything is so much more layered and complicated and has so much more foundation and depth to it that it's been really fun to play. It's been really fun to, and I feel like it's less just direct, and it's more, everything's so much more layered now.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because when you look at the show, it's like every character, like you said, everyone is trying to survive in their own way, in the way that they know how to survive best. And that just clashes with the next person. But everyone's just trying to get through whatever that situation is.
Yeah,
it's a crazy dynamic.
Yeah. I mean, it's built in a way that one of the things that Courtney's really great at, sort of putting a theme out for the year, and it's sort of laced into the storylines. And betrayal was one for a while. Consequences is a big theme. It's like, I like to look at it like this for the show, and this is true for a lot of the characters. Like, what are you willing to do to get what you really want? What are you willing to really do to get what you want? And then are you willing to accept the consequences of those actions? Right? Because that's, you could like look at almost every character and link that up with them in this season. Because everybody's out for something. And then, okay, can you sleep at night? Are you willing to pay the piper for this, you know? So it's, you know, it's one of those shows where you love people, you hate people, bodies are gonna fall, and, you know, consequences are gonna be there.
When you look at the power universe, and basically like there's boundless opportunities at this point to continue going. How long do you stay in? Is it like as long as absolutely possible kind of thing, or do you think your character at some point like kind of washes out?
Yeah, I mean, I think realistically speaking, I feel like at some point I would like to think that it would be a big build-up prior to that moment, especially because I've been a part of this for so long, that to just kind of go out with a whimper would be like, oh, what? So I don't know if it's like building up into something on Tommy's show, or building up into some big, you know, season 4 sort of a thing. I'm not really sure. I do think that it would, the way I don't see Cooper Saxe going out necessarily with like, oh, hey guys, this is the last season of the show. Now it's season 6 or something. And then, okay, the show's over and it's like, oh man, what an incredible series. Like, I have a feeling that Cooper Saxe is going out in a body bag, you know?
Sadly, I do as well. I don't want him to kill you off, but I feel it. I don't think it's going to be a Cooper Saxe move to Washington. I don't think that's. I don't think they're going to let you leave like that.
It's funny because I remember when there was I think it was episode 8 of season 6, when Tommy and Ghost break into my apartment, and I'm like, you know, having a good time there with some porn or something, and they'd come in and put a bag over my head and beat me, and I think I'm done, right?
Yeah.
But as Shane, when I got that script, you know, I'd always heard like, oh yeah, Courtney will reach out a week or so, or a few weeks maybe ahead of time, and kind of be like, hey, so listen, I just wanted to let you know that in this next episode, it's happening. And and so I'm sitting there reading that scene, going like, she didn't even call me. See, I can't believe it. And then, you know, Ghost of all people basically kind of does a stay of execution for me, and walks away. And so, you know, in some respects, you know, Tommy wanted to kill me. And in some respects, I think it would be pretty interesting as a fan of the show if somehow I end up over on Force, like season 3 of Force, or maybe 4 of Force, or something like that, where I'm back in the game to get Tommy, and it's kind of full circle. He finally gets his opportunity to take me out.
That would be insane.
I think people would love it.
That would be insane.
I think it would be. I could see it being. You know, I think that I think the fans of the show, the real fans of the show, would be like, yes,
finally. Yeah.
And then by the way, I do think that next year they'd be like, you know what, I kind of miss that guy.
You're like, see, Saxe, you should have left him alone. You would have been fine. And then after a while, it's like, when you're dead, like, Saxe would have never let this happen. And it's just you do need those people to kind of hate, right? So yeah,
when they kill me off the show, if they kill me off the show, that next year they'll have to find somebody to fill those shoes, you know, to sort of fill that part of the story, you know.
No, absolutely. What's next for you? Or, I mean, I know because this is happening right now, so we don't want to jinx it. What's like a future goal, big goal, something that you want to kind of push forward to?
Well, one thing that I'm working on right now is I'm writing a project that I really want to produce and kind of use my network of awesome producers, directors, actors that I now have after 20 almost 30 years in this business.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's 28 years I've been doing this professionally, which is crazy. So what I would like to do is get it made, and I feel like this is I feel like we are, well, regardless, like what you're doing right here is what I'm talking about, which is that you're making something happen. You're making your content. You're creating, you dream something up and you make it happen. And you pursue it and flesh it out, and that's what I need to do next. I think that's something I'm excited about. I'm at a point in my career and in my path where, like, I want to work on specific kind of projects with people that I love working with. Like, at this point, it's like I just want to have fun and do something worthwhile with people that I love and respect, and that I feel like are like family. I mean, I can't think of anything more exciting than to go make some really great movie with people that every day I'm like, I can't wait to get to set with these people. And I feel like we're at a place now that we weren't when I started in the business. We're at a place now where we can really make quality content for a reasonable budget, and there are avenues for you to take your content. It used to be, if you're going to make a movie, you take it to the market. Basically, you get a few shots at kind of trying to sell it, and then if it doesn't sell, you're kind of like, okay, I guess that movie didn't get sold.
Right.
And damn it, you do the festival circuit, and maybe you win a couple of awards and try to get a little attention, but then that's it. There's like no money in it, right? You just wasted that money. And now I feel like if you make a good movie or a good show, but if you make a good movie and not even great, just a good movie, you're gonna find a way to kind of go Hulu, Amazon, Netflix, HBO, Showtime, Stars. You're gonna find an avenue, a place to sell it, and you're gonna find an audience. And so that's what I'd really like to do. I'd like to kind of get in the business of writing, producing, and acting in my own content.